So I'm going to turn it over now to Lisa Kivirist, and she'll talk about all of the things she does, which is quite a lot.
Hi, thanks for coming. My name is Lisa Kivirist, and my family and I run in Serendipity Farm and Bed and Breakfast outside Monroe, Wisconsin, about 2.5 hours north from here. We're a diversified farm, market garden. We run the farm on renewable energy and do a lot of writing and other projects under the Good Food umbrella. But to flash backwards 15 years, we were doing what my mother still calls normal people do. We had jobs in Chicago, in cubicles that gave us paychecks and credit cards and all that stuff that we thought we were supposed to want. And this was actually before things like Family Farm was going on and co-ops were starting, and we were feeling like we were having major mid-20 life crises, but we were feeling really alone and isolated and escaping up to Wisconsin for the weekend, typical tourist camping, biking, hiking kind of stuff. And when it boiled down to, well, gee, we could buy a shoebox studio condo, or we could buy 5 acres in Wisconsin, we said, sure. So not that I recommend the quitting your job and moving to the farm with no farming experience, no money, and a roll of duct tape, but the short story is we're still around. So if we can, anybody can, and it's really challenged, celebrated, and inspired us in our journey towards a better food system and a better source of food and sharing that. So on that note, I wanted to leave a couple nuggets with us all for this session and for the rest of the day. And the first and probably foremost is to rethink our assumptions about food and our world in general, because we live at a time right now where we really desperately need creative, innovative solutions to things. And you'll come to a venue like this, and I leave with pages of notes of all sorts of different ways to approach things and look at labels, etc. And one label specifically to look at is to rethink the name of our workshop of eating on a dime, in the sense of cheap. And I debate this with my dear mother a lot. There's a big difference, Mom, between frugal and cheap. I am frugal, I am not cheap. In America right now, the average family spends about 10% of the household income on food. And in the 1950s, we were spending 20%. That's a complicated equation, and there's a lot of reasons for it. My primary personal reason is subsidies of corn that our federal government's giving and basically making cheap, crappy food cheap. But that's another discussion. But the other issue that we need to fundamentally change is the fact that we as a society think cheap is good. And that if we get something cheap like food, we have more money to buy more stuff, to like make our food or cook our food or buy hot dog cookers and doodads up the wazoo, when we need to rethink, and the people sharing today's session, I know, feel that having that people around the table getting back to the core message of food is a whole lot more value than the gizmos that we think we can buy. So that's one of the fundamental assumptions. And also, too, to not assume things about people. And this is real important, I think, for us to change how we eat as a country, because it's very easy to have assumptions of something has an organic label, it doesn't. Somebody eats this way, they don't. We all don't know why, and we need to be asking those questions in dialogue. Do you know what this hopey, clappy, happy, changey, crunchy farmer chick had for supper last night? Fried fondue. Like batter fried fondue. Not only that, we were frying McNugget type of Costco equivalents. Yeah. Now, before you run out and call me a hypocrite up the wazoo, which I've been called multiple times and worse, that's okay. But let me put it in context. My parents, who are in their mid-80s, live in the Chicago suburbs, so it worked out real convenient. My husband John and I and our 8-year-old Liam could come spend the night with Grandma and roll over and come here this morning. And last time I was at my folks', I found this dusty, brand new fondue box in my mom's closet that she bought at some sale somewhere 10 years ago. I'm like, we have to make this fondue, Mom, like now. And that's partly motivated by their age, but it's partly motivated by this, we need to use what we have. So she made this fondue, and I brought the organic onions and potatoes and cheese curds from Wisconsin, and she brought the chicken McNugget equivalents. Liam thought this was just the greatest thing in the world. We gorged, we ate way too much of food that I'm sure my nutritionist friends would deem as not healthy, but it was given with love. When Grandma brought those chicken things to the table, it was her way of giving. And I need to remind myself of that because I can get judgmental and I can get opinionated. But if we're sharing food and the intent is good, we need to take it at that and celebrate it and use those fondue pots or whatever else we may have in our own family closets and do it now. Secondly is to think beyond the plate as far as what a healthy lifestyle is. Now we're talking about food here, and believe me, I can talk about food all day. But is there anybody in the room who kind of feels like they're at Fantasy Island today talking about these things, they're going back to a job they hate tomorrow? No? Oh, all right. I'm not recruiting. That's good. Because believe me, I wasn't in those shoes 15 years ago. I hated what I did, and here I was working at a job in advertising, trying to sell people more stuff so I could make money to buy food that I felt good about. It was a warped equation. And we need to rethink those equations personally. We could be eating all the healthy food in the world, but if we're living day to day in a livelihood that we are not connected to with our passion, there's no equation there as far as I'm concerned. Then go ahead and eat crap because you're living crap. I mean, put the first things first. Now, that said, we obviously live in tenuous economic times, but when we quit our jobs, that was like right in the middle of the dot-com boom, the mid-90s. Everybody thought we were crazy then. Everybody might think you're crazy. Now, they're always going to think you're crazy for following what you're passionate about, so just do it anyway. That's what we say. A couple of books we've worked on, Rural Renaissance. Thank you, Vanna. And Ecopreneuring. Rural Renaissance is our story of moving from the farm to Chicago and different personal narratives. Ecopreneuring stemmed from questions we were getting from folks around the campfire at our B&B. It's like, well, how'd you do it? How'd you do it financially? How do you guys now live on what half of one of you made at the ad agency 15 years ago? And your quality of life is up from a business perspective. How can you do that? And we have a booth here for In Serendipity, so feel free to pop by and see that. But the bottom line is make those changes, whatever they may be. You don't need to quit your job and start a farm, although I'm personally biased towards that one. One area I work in is supporting the role of women in agriculture. 30% increase of new women farmers, according to the last USDA census. I love that statistic, Yahoo. They forget the fact that this is the first time they counted women. Yeah, especially farms like ours that are co-owned. There's only conveniently one slot for a name on the USDA form. Things are changing, they're changing slowly. But that said, there's an incredibly vibrant, I'm sure, women in this room who either have farms or are interested in them. These are women under 55, which is going to fundamentally shape our agricultural system. When you consider one state over in Iowa, the average age of a white male farmer, which is what they have, is 71 plus with no land succession plan. So things are dynamically changing. Third, on a more practical note, is to use it up. Use up the food that you buy. And it sounds so basic, but in America, we're throwing out on average, it's like 1.68 pounds of food a day, which is over 460 pounds a year. I checked, that's not including compost, that's not peels, that's food. And we all do it. Things go past expiration date, you forget about it, it's a science experiment in the back of the fridge. So what we've been doing in our house the last couple of years is after the holidays, after we're all done eating and we are just little happy stuffed turkeys, we quit buying food. And we eat what we have. And it, by this time of year in March, turns out into a competitive sport because we grow about 80% of our own food needs on the farm. So that helps. We've got the chest freezer, as Portia was saying, it's a great way. And the reason why chest freezers are good is they open this way. That's why they're much more, they use less energy because you don't lose as much cold air as when it opens up as you know what I mean. Yeah. So, and we learned the hard way. Zucchini's not red wine. It doesn't improve year to year. So use it up. But that said, we're getting to kind of some of the interesting ingredients. When I go to our co-op, Willie Street in Madison, and I get excited in the grain aisle and I buy things I have no idea what I'm doing, this is the time of year I'm forcing myself to cook them. So we came across, when we played this game the first year, a big bag of, and maybe some of you guys have this, they were like leftover candy canes and those little red and white mints you get at restaurants that you just mindlessly take. All right, well, we were true to our rules. We have to use everything in our house. Now, there's, I don't think, any nutritional value in those, but we took them, therefore we must eat them. So to Laura's point about Googling, we started researching some recipes and testing some things out, and we came up with a crushed peppermint biscotti recipe. And we made this for holiday gifts a couple years ago, and it's in our farm cookbook, Edible Earth. And they went over really well, to the point that everybody in our community now gives us their peppermint candies every year. So we're like stuck with this tradition whether we wanted it or not because we were trying to use it up. So beware, consequences like that may arise. But it's all good. It's all with good intent. But we're real hardcore about it. And there's something very spiritual, if you will, when you get into April and May and your pantries are empty. And there's space for new things, and there's space for new food and different things, much less getting creative with what you have. So if I could give you one practical tip from our own family, that would be it. But as on that spring note, you guys probably had that nice batch of weather last week where it was just gorgeous. So we're out in the gardens and we're tilling up. We're going to get our potatoes in next week, so we're getting ready. And I'm working there, and John's working there, and Liam's helping out. When all of a sudden I look behind me, and I see 2 tigers chasing me. See, that's peculiar. We have garlic mustard as an exotic species in Wisconsin. I didn't realize tigers, but I don't think about it long because the tigers are chasing me and I start to run. And I'm running, and we are on 5 acres in the driftless area, so nice rolling hills. But I'm running, and I come to this 200-foot cliff. I think this is the part I start blaming John for this whole situation that's occurring. But I look, and there's this 200-foot cliff there. It wasn't there yesterday, but it's there now. What do? Tigers are chasing me. I look down the cliff. I look up. There's a branch hanging out of the cliff, like a foot down. Okay. If I jump to the branch and I hold on, I will be 199 feet from the ground, but the tigers won't eat me, so I figured this is good. So I jump to the branch. I hold on. Life is good for a moment until I look at the branch, and I see 2 mice chewing on the branch. And I say, this is just getting worse and worse, and probably clearly blame John for it, but he's nowhere around. I've got to solve the situation myself. I'm holding on the branch while the mice chew. When all of a sudden I look in this direction and I see 1 perfectly ripe, beautiful, kind of out of season, but it's there, strawberry. And I say to myself, that looks just too good to resist. I am going to eat it. So I stretch over, have to let go, grab the strawberry. It's just the most amazing, beautiful thing in the world. Well, you can surmise the fate of me in this rather creative Wisconsin adaptation of a Buddhist folktale, in which the tigers represent death. It's going to catch up with all of us eventually, folks. Let's make that clear. And the mice represent time. It's eating away from all of us every day, however we look at it. So what we need to all remember is to eat the strawberry. And we can take that here in this crowd to even more of a food level of to eat the strawberry and remember the joy behind food. Especially now as we head into the spring-summer season, as things come up and they're available and they're bountiful in the market, to eat them and enjoy them and celebrate them and share them, and to remember that joyful, passionate side about food. Because believe me, I spend the majority of my days getting caught in either policy semantics or arguing with folks about details and all these little things that we need to remind ourselves that we're in this because we love it. And we love to eat it and share it and celebrate it and eat those strawberries. So on that note, I brought you guys recipes for asparagus, because that'll come before strawberries. And being a good cheesehead transplant now, they have some good Wisconsin cheese on them. So feel free to grab some cheesy asparagus recipes there. And again, we'll be at our booth for the rest of the day, or you'll find John, a big, tall Slovakian guy, and you can ask him all the technical questions about wind turbines and kilowatts and things. And happy to talk more. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lisa. And I was getting a bit nervous about tigers in Wisconsin. I had no idea. And I do have to say, I know a lot of you couldn't look behind you when she asked that question about how many people are happy and things like that, but this is a really happy room. We've got a really good group. Very few hands went up. So, I mean, I think that's actually a good sign of things.